people sometimes celebrate the fact that we were, a part of the British Empire. We don't understand what that means. We kind of gloss over the fact that we controlled 5/8 of the slave trade in Europe. We were the second city of the UK because of the money that came in because of slavery and colonialism. And in terms of the wealth that generated, Liverpool wasn't even a town before slavery, but because of the wealth that came into the city, we became quite a wealthy city. If you look around our city, we look at big buildings, if you look around the parks, all of that was funded by slave traders, and there's a legacy of what the slave trade did in terms of building the city up, if you want to say, on the backs of black people, yet we don't acknowledge that that's how the city was built. So we celebrate our architecture, we celebrate our football clubs, we celebrate all of those things, but we completely overlook what the city was built on. And that's not fair because, as you say, Jenny, there's a legacy there, there's a legacy of what that racial inequality caused. So if we look at William Gladstone, for example, John Gladstone, William's father, was a slave trader. When the slave trade ended, he got the single biggest sum in reparations. He used that money to send William to the best schools in England. And William then went on to be Prime Minister. And although he decried slavery, he also fought to receive the biggest amount of money when slavery ended. And if you look in contrast at the black community, black people literally were freed from slavery with the clothes on the back. They had to continue to work for 5 years after it ended as part of the deal to end slavery. And so we've always been 10 steps behind, and that kind of inequality that lasts for generations and generations and generations. And it's so important that knowledge is known, because that's the foundation of racial inequality. And the only way to undo that cycle of racism and to undo that cycle of inequality and to understand the black community aren't just victims of the circumstances. We've actually been, this is the starting line. We've been way back there across the road. We've been nowhere near the starting line for generations. And the only way to undo that cycle is through knowledge, is through education, and is through empowering people by decolonising the curriculum. So locations like this are absolutely fantastic, and they have a key role to play. That floor, for a lot of black people, was a place of empowerment, because when I was younger, we didn't learn. Being black, you learn to two things. So I learned that Africa was a poor place and we had to send it money. And I learned that slavery was something awful. We don't really know who caused it, but it was something really bad that happened to black people. And I never learned an accurate representation of black history. I didn't learn that before slavery, Africa was a kingdom of countries, of kings and queens, and there was so much to be proud about. We were scientists, we had the best of everything. And Africa is one of the most material rich continents in the world. I didn't learn that in school, but what I did do as a young person was I took myself to this museum, and I took myself to the third floor, and I learned about slavery, but I also saw the wall of inspiration which we looked at earlier upstairs, which showed me black heroes. It showed me James Clark, who was here in the 1800s, and he came on a ship as a stowaway, but then he was adopted by an Irish family. He was a fantastic swimmer, and he was swimming to represent Liverpool in national galas. A black person representing Liverpool, but not only that, he used to save people's lives when people were drowning in the Mersey. He saved the lives of young people, and he was awarded a silver medal for his efforts, and he was also the first person in Liverpool to have a street named after him. And so for a young black person who's told constantly that everything to do with blackness and to do with my history is bad and is something to feel really embarrassed about, it is so empowering.
It's about pride, isn't it?
Yeah. To learn.
And how is it working with Black Lives Matter and challenging the way in which history is taught in the schools?
So it challenges those narratives because we call it whitewashing history. So basically, history is written by the winners. So black children are taught history in a very one-sided way. But in this region, although this museum is here, and I would say it should be an obligation for all children to go to this museum, it's not part of our curriculum. So it's really important to encourage schools to decolonise the curriculum. An example of what's happening to decolonise the curriculum is we've got organisations, grassroots organisations such as the Black Curriculum coming to Liverpool to do workshops over the next year to teach children through creative art about Black history and to teach them an accurate representation. So not that it scares over the gritty bits that no one really wants to talk about, but we acknowledge them, but we also empower children by teaching them other parts of our history. So Black history is a broad and vast concept. It's not just slavery, it's so much more. It's our academics, our scholars, it's so much more. So it should be taught not even as Black history, just as history to children.
I'm so pleased with what you said there. I think our children should also read a wonderful book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney, which demonstrates the economic history. Slavery was defeated eventually by the bravery of slaves and by support and demonstrations and so on. Now, we achieved change through demonstrations and protests. At the moment, the government is putting legislation through Parliament, the police bill, which will profoundly restrict the power to demonstrate and basically allow the police to decide whether a cause is legitimate or not. You're a great activist here in Merseyside. How do you think it's going to affect you, and what are you doing against it?
So the police power and sentencing bill is going to massively impact marginalised communities. Basically what we say is it comes for us first, and that's what this is doing. So through the whole of 2020, BLM protested to try and have our trauma and our experiences as Black people heard in order to affect change and to impact change. And whilst in America you can see that a lot of legislation and policy changes have happened on the back of that, and there's been a level of listening, from a kind of political perspective. In the UK, it appears that the government have seen the power and the feeling behind the protest. Global protests, and near enough every city in the UK was on the streets crying out to have Black people's experiences heard. Yet the government have now legislated basically to say we want to silence you as a Black community. So this legislation basically means if as few as one protester stands on the street with a megaphone, we can be sent to prison for 10 years. It means that statues, if you damage a statue or deface a statue, you can go to prison for 10 years. And this is at a time when the average sentence for a rape conviction is 5 years. And it just shows that the government are more concerned about silencing people than listening to them and actually impacting the policies which will change our lives. So there's been a number of legislations which have been brought in, the PHSE legislation, the Sewell report, which are all spreading this message that we don't want to promote victim narratives. And to me that basically says we don't want to listen to the Black community.
In other words, they're more concerned about Colston and Rose than they are about the history of slavery and the way in which it impacts on our children's education.
100%. And in terms of what we're doing, so I was one of the founders of the National Kill the Bill movement through BLM. We've got links all over the UK. And it was just this strength of feeling, I'll be honest with you, generally for the first week, I just wanted to sit and cry because it was like all that campaign and we didn't hear us and we didn't hear. But from that anger and upset and compassion and drive, so we literally stayed up all night writing statements, and it was quite significant because it's sometimes hard to unify people and to get movements to come together. It
has its problems, yeah.
It does. This was something that we managed to get every single person we went to and said, listen, can you come in on this thing? Can we strategise actions and create this movement? Not one person said no, they were on the call. Everybody knew how important it was. Everybody knew it was going to impact the Black community more, particularly the fact that they brought in more stop and search legislation onto this legislation. They're going to stop and search us more, which just is, it baffles the mind how they're going to stop and search us more when some stop and searches are only 4% results in conviction, so 96% are just profiling. So from there we created movements we've called National Day of Actions, we've lobbied MPs, and through the Kill the Bill movement we managed to get people to abstain against this bill, to fight back at a political level but also at a grassroots level. So near enough every week since the bill was announced, there have been people on the street protesting against it. And as I hope you've seen some of the protests, the response from the police was sometimes really, really harsh and disproportionately violent, and yet people still get out onto the street peacefully to come together and resist the bill. So in Liverpool there's another National Day of Action on the 29th of May, and we'll be doing a protest in Liverpool. It's going to be 2 o'clock, it's going to start at St George's Square, and we're going to march through the city, and we're going to focus on the actions that we want people to take.
I'm going to be on protest on the 29th. You're going to be on protest. And I hope an awful lot more people are going to be on protest because this police bill has got to be stopped. No, it's got to be killed. The bill, that is. Chantelle, thank you very, very much. Pleasure.
Thank you, Jeremy.